And welcome to the Career Insights. My name is Bianca Parsons, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alberta Food Processors Association. We're really excited to be doing this today and to have the opportunity to be partnering this year with CareersNOW. They're a very well-established group that's doing some incredible work in Ontario, working with youth and giving them wonderful insights into our professions. And now we're just excited to be able to share their message here in Alberta, and we're able to do that, thankfully, with some incredible partners with the Government of Alberta. So thank you for those of you who are joining us today and for your time. We really appreciate having all of you here. I'm really lucky to have two dear friends, but also some incredible leaders in this industry joining us today. If you haven't had a chance to meet them, we have Matt and Brian joining us. We're going to start with Brian. Brian, can you just give me like a quick high level, who's Brian? And hello to everyone that's joining us.
Yeah, my name is Brian Espiritu. I am the business analytics and product manager at Foothills Creamery. Foothills makes butter and ice cream products, and we serve Western Canada. I've been with the company for 8 years.
Wonderful. Do you want to touch on too who you are for AFPA?
Yeah, I'm also part of the board of the Alberta Food Processors Association.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn to you, Matt.
Sounds great. So yeah, I'm Matt Labine. I'm a business development lead here at NAIT. So that's the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. I'm in the applied research group. So much of my job is finding companies who want to do applied research projects with the team here at NAIT and finding industry collaborations. So working with AFPA has been an excellent opportunity to find people, companies looking for help in agriculture and food and lining up the research to help them grow their businesses.
I wanted to tell you all a little bit more about CareersNOW. So they're an award-winning program. They've been around for 5 years in Ontario. They've had incredible success in raising awareness of careers in the food and beverage processing sector and connecting job seekers and students with hiring employers. That's one of the reasons why we brought these two gentlemen to join me today, to kind of talk about the work that they've done, their experiences, and teach everyone today a little bit more about our industry and how it all works. When people hear food and beverage processing, there's sometimes this little bit of misunderstanding of who we are. Matt, like if you have someone approach you and say, okay, what is food and beverage processing? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think that question it's a fun one because food and beverage processing is like, it encompasses a whole lot of business operations. I think when I think of like food processing, like any business, you're gonna have your like front of the office activities like accounting, HR, finance, kind of normal things. But then in food, kind of the cool thing is you peel back this layer and there's this whole like technology, food safety aspect that I think a lot of people miss and maybe don't appreciate. And from my background and much of what I've done for companies has been kind of in that more technical role, helping the companies follow regulatory requirements, meet customer requirements. And so there's an opportunity to actually look at it from like, what is food processing? How is it different? What are the risks that we're managing and how are we doing that differently? I think that's what I always like to tell people, that it's this interesting, cool industry. But until you're in it, you're missing a whole part of it. There's a whole world there that until you work in it, you may not really appreciate.
Very fair. When you kind of look at it or you try to describe it to people that aren't in the industry, Brian, if someone was looking at this for the very first time, how would you describe our industry?
It's funny when people think about um, food and beverage, people visualize like a production floor instantly, right? So production is important, but there's so much more beyond that. Like Matt said, you have your HR, you have your sales and marketing, accounting, warehouse, maintenance, quality control. So it's kind of a combination of, um, food manufacturing. So just like any other consumer goods company, but then you have that specialized manufacturing and food safety roles.
Couldn't agree more. I think sometimes too, even as a society, certain words change and meanings change. And ironically, so I have a 6-year-old son, and I once said that I work in processing, and he's like, processed cheese, mommy, isn't great for you. And it was like this idea that something he'd learned probably in a classroom or something like that had painted a picture in his brain, and then how it had changed for him of what our industry was. Well, when I look at our members at AFPA and this program Careers Now, it started in Ontario with Food and Beverage Ontario. When I look at their members and mine, we have so many different companies, from growers to, people that, they maybe raise their own animals and now they're producing or processing those animals. So I think sometimes we get stuck in the language instead of also looking at what we offer. Like, I know, Matt, you guys have done some really cool things at NAIT, helping people from different growers to so many different companies up there. My next question for you guys is, sometimes we're looking at people too that have done a career change. I know myself, that's what I personally did. Is there a great time for job seekers, students, or career changers to look at this industry? Is there an ideal time, or is any time a great time? And either of you, feel free to answer first.
I'll give you my experience, because I didn't come into food as my first career step, I guess. When I graduated, I had a bachelor's degree in science. What I knew is I did not want to do a PhD, and I didn't want to do university level research. That just never, there was no one thing that was just like, Matt, this is what you're going to do. You're going to study this to the end of time. That never really called out to me. So I got a job as a QC technician in a maternity backfill. And my job was just testing products, just coming from that science background and being well, I understand how to run analysis. And that was sort of the foothold into the world of manufacturing. And this wasn't even in food manufacturing, but having that experience in manufacturing parlayed completely into an expanded role in the food sector. The nice thing in food is that it's steady. Everybody has to eat. When I worked in Calgary, the owner of the business said, yeah, it's not sexy, but we're always growing. We don't go through these boom bust cycles. We don't have big bonuses, but we're always steadily growing as an industry as the population grows. So it's always there. It's a great, I think timing is just when you're ready to kind of look at what you've done and maybe what fits. For me, it was just having a technical background just worked well in quality assurance roles. And as a plug for AFPA, literally, I had no food safety training, but I became quality assurance manager for food companies because I took AFPA training. I took training in HACCP. I took internal auditor training. I took all these training programs. I didn't have formal degrees in it. I could take training. I could get the certifications. And I could show that I was growing in my career and my knowledge. And I could apply that to the companies. And the best part about food companies is that they love to promote from within. I'm sure Brian will have more to say here, but it's once you start working and the company likes you, it's they want to keep you. They don't want to let you go. There's always incentives to keep you at that business and help you grow. That's what I'd love to share. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, kind of like what Matt said. It's the stability, right? Everyone has to eat. It doesn't matter if there's a pandemic. It doesn't matter if it's trade disruptions. There's a certain stability and continuity that the food industry offers. And beyond that, the community of people that work in the food industry, it's quite close. People are passionate about what they do, and it brings people together. So put together the traditional skills plus the emerging skills, whether it's innovation, ag tech, research, put that together with the traditional production and manufacturing skills, and you get the food industry.
For sure. Before we were live, I was kind of sharing with both Brian and Matt my story, and my story was that my parents our families is full of immigrants, and when my parents came, especially one of my parents, when they came to Canada, they eventually worked in the food business, and there was kind of this negative thought in the back of their brain about their children going into the food industry later on. It was thought of as something that they maybe had to do at one point, or something that they should do. I don't know, but I don't really feel like there was a lot of woohoo, you're going into the food industry when my trajectory changed. However, I was in television before and did television production and stuff like that. But when my career changed, my parents, as I look at the successes and the different things that we've had, are my biggest cheerleaders. And I think it's because their experience in food hasn't been my experience in food. And I think even as an industry, we've evolved so much to truly see, and I'll touch on it with both of you in a moment, but both of you have your MBAs and you're in our sector. I think there was an idea at one point that it was just entry level and there was nowhere to grow. And you eloquently said before, Matt, the opportunity to grow from within. Brian, I know you, congratulations, did your MBA this year, and still working with Foothills. What if we just, before we get to the next part, do you want to touch on that, Brian? Just have the opportunities that you've had. How you've what were you able to do while still being employed in the food sector?
Yeah, so similar to Matt, I actually started with Foothills as a QA supervisor. So
Nice.
I didn't have a lot of skills in terms of like specific to the food industry, but you get to learn. You get to do your internal auditor training, your HACCP training, gap assessments with inspectors and auditors. As time moved on, like I learned so much about the processes and the production um, here at Foothills, and I had the opportunity to lead the plant operations as a plant operations manager for a few years. Um, because of my formal training only took me so far, so I have a science degree as well. I wanted to learn more about the business side, so I went back to school, did my MBA while still working at Foothills, and now I get to work with a lot of different departments at work here, whether it's accounting, whether it's HR. I still do a lot of work with the production team because I do plant capacity analysis with them, optimization. So yeah, it's kind of just opened up a lot of um, fields, a lot of opportunities for me to kind of grow.
Amazing. Okay, Matt, I'm just going to switch back. So you deal with a lot of students, so you have kind of a different perspective, I think, as well. Can you just walk me back a little bit to exactly what happens at NAIT, like how your kind of your setup works, and then if you could just touch on as well, that applied research, the support, the innovation, like how is that all part of our agri-food sector?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, in my role, what we see the most is when companies are talking to us about what it's like to work at NAIT. Most often we hear, how are students part of this project? And so I think that's really cool. I don't know that that's necessarily like the food and beverage processing sector specifically, but I do hear it a lot in my role, and that's who my clients are. So I hear that a lot, like how are students on these projects? And so for us, we operate in a research kitchen here at NAIT, and so we're here to do like bench scale development work, R&D work, flavor work, consumer sensory trials, shelf life extensions, just kind of like back end R&D work for companies that just wouldn't have that capacity themselves. And in the food space, we're dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises. The vast majority don't have a research team, right? And so you can think of us as sort of like, here's your technical team that helps you solve challenges that come up in manufacturing. And largely that's why I work here, is because I see the value in applied research, and I love the opportunity to put students on projects. So to walk it back, students will work with us in our center. We work project by project, and so projects come in and we can assign students under like a lead food scientist. So we'll have food scientists who are kind of like managing the overarching project, but a lot of the bench work can be done by students to show them the opportunities in research. And I think for students, a lot of times you don't get that exposure. You might, depending on what programming you're in, if you're a polytech student, maybe you're in culinary, you may not have any concept of what does research really mean in food. And so working in a research kitchen kind of gives you that exposure to say like, oh, I'm running like recipes, but I'm doing tweaks and tweaks and tweaks, and I'm tracking kind of the outcomes, and if that works me towards my goals. But it's a little bit different than culinary. Or you can have students here from NAIT in like chemical technologies, and they're a little bit more analytical minded, but then that gives them the exposure to the more creative side of food, because food kind of gives you that, what does it taste like? How do you track that? That's a little bit different than like a number on a screen after running an analysis. pH was 7, so it's fine, So it's cool to kind of round out exposure for students to say, there's a lot of opportunities to work in food and beverage. A lot of food companies will have internal labs, and they'll run routine analysis internally, or there's third-party labs that do analysis for food companies as well. So the student exposure is just to show them kind of what R&D really looks like, and if that's a fit for them or not, right? Sometimes you don't want that creative side and you'd rather just have the numbers. And then so for applied research in general, like we're here when companies have any kind of technical problem they're trying to kind of overcome, and maybe they need some R&D work to do it. Being applied, our whole goal is like not publishing papers. It's to apply any knowledge that maybe comes out of a university and putting it into practice for the companies. Because there can be a very large disconnect. And so I love that part. Being applied means the most to me. I love working here for that reason. It's one of the reasons I didn't really continue on to do a PhD or anything like that. I'm just too broadly curious. Want to see what else is out there and how can we help a lot of companies solve challenges and hopefully expose students to these companies. And we've had it happen often enough where students get jobs with companies that execute projects with us. So it's just that cool pipeline to show there's really knowledgeable people that are really excited to work and just give them that chance to do it. Yeah.
And I think there's this thing too that both of you have touched on it a bit as well, that you fall in love with a company, love with a product. So I think it's hard
Yeah.
to leave, I bet, as well for the students. You know, it's a nice segue for them. For yourself, Brian, like your role specifically now, you kind of have business analytics, you've got product management, you've got a whole bunch of things that are all put into it. Is there any 2 days that are the same? Probably not. But what would you say is like an average week, super high level view, if someone was wanting to follow your footsteps? What would that average week look like?
Yeah, so my work's quite unique. My role sits at the intersection between data analytics and product development. So in terms of data analytics, anything that turns information into business decisions, I help out, right? So I work with many different departments, could be different departments every day, whether it's sales, volumes, costing, margins, could be plant capacity, could be, analyzing our sales by points of distribution. So I have to involve the warehouse. So many different projects, and it's different every day. For new product development, I look at trends. What's happening at the consumer level, why it's happening, what are competitors doing, how do I bring ideas to life? So, for example, we launched this year a protein ice cream. I was sourcing ingredients. I was analyzing how we can meet the formula can meet nutrition targets that we set for ourselves. I was talking to food scientists. I was reviewing literature. I was reviewing the equipment that we have to see if that would be suitable for use to make protein ice cream, right? So there's so much that it kind of just my role is spread out quite a bit, but I love it. Like it's two things that I can do is work in the office and then sit in front of a computer and analyze data, but also bring that to life.
I appreciate you said consumer trends. This question is just for both of you. Is there things that you've seen change in this profession with consumer trends? Have you seen something, that maybe now there's different professions or different, vocations that people can do that didn't exist before? Like, I know I was lucky enough. AFPA had a golf tournament, and Brian gave out some samples of the protein ice cream, and I never thought of that, right? Like I never thought that was what we were going to be running to, and then explaining to my mom as an adult, no, I'm allowed to have more ice cream. It's my protein intake for the day. But it's pretty cool to see how your products have evolved. But how would you say professions have evolved for either of you? Like any professions out there right now that you didn't think were part of this years ago, or parts of your companies that you see that have grown, or your institutions?
One thing that comes to mind, and it was a few years ago now, but just software development in general and how that's impacted like resource planning within food processing, and just the requirements to have traceability has sort of like makes all food companies kind of think, well, how am I doing this, and is this kind of reliable? So you follow the journey as the company grows. You're probably using like Excel spreadsheets as your database, and you're like, this isn't a super reliable solution. But as software has come such a long way, you can really get custom solutions targeted to your processor, your processing, your manufacturing setup essentially, and you can know, where is this ingredient in my plant? if and when something happens. So I think that's something I saw in the quality assurance side, to say like there's pretty cool solutions that were coming out of like software technology, and their implementation in food is very real, and technology adoption is there in food, absolutely. Once you hit a certain sort of threshold, maybe it's size, volume of units you're producing, you start to look at new technology solutions, moving from like paper-based batch sheets into electronic ones, even in that. And those systems have just gotten so much better. But you're right, the trending side, like the protein trending side, I could see that from our side in the research kitchen. We get a lot of inbound companies interested in developing protein forward formulations.
Are there any
Yeah.
careers at Foothills, Brian?
So it's almost like, so we're following trends, but those trends lead to decisions, and those decisions create a lot of work, right, across the organization, across the industry. So if there's a new product, if we want to do research and formulation, we might reach out to NAIT, right, and then it will impact the type of work that they do, or other food scientists. Or if we're sourcing costing materials, we'll be working with suppliers in their R&D departments, right? Whether it's, an ice cream inclusion or the dairy proteins. Regulatory is a big one too. If something's novel, like how do we navigate the rules, the regulations, labeling? We have to be involving Health Canada or the CFIA, or if you're provincial, the AHS, right? Funding would be one thing, working with government representatives, grant writers, and things like that. But yeah, and that's just externally. Internally, there's a lot of work from procurement to production, QA, supply chain, sales and marketing, right? So a consumer trend might start with something that we might see in the market, but turning that trend into something successful easily involves so many different career disciplines, So it's the small decisions that we make impacts a lot of different personnel, for sure.
Good point. When
That
you
definitely makes me
look
think of
from
something too.
hiring, oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I'll just add one thing. Like I think as a profession, I think like procurement has been one that really has bubbled up recently. That is actually a bit of an expertise you can get.
Can you describe procurement? Like if you're someone that's new to this industry, how would you describe it?
Yeah, for sure. Like your job is very supply chain focused, to look up and down the supply chain. It could be things like like Brian is planning to do this protein ice cream run, but how much packaging do I have to have ready for him to do that run? Not to mention every other ingredient that you're also purchasing. And so that procurement role is it's supplier facing. So you're always negotiating with suppliers, so you can have a little bit of fun in like, hey, we buy at big volume. Can you give us a better price? This other company's actually offer me a better alternative, and your spec sheets match, for example. And it's a pretty multifaceted role where you actually have to be pretty technical on the looking at spec sheets, especially in food, because it's regulated. There's requirements for plastic, for example, as being food grade, and you need to get an attestation to that fact. And so you're going out getting information for the business. You're trying to get better pricing for the business. You're aware of what your volumes are. You're kind of in touch with planning on the operations side. But yeah, it's an important role, and it's something that has become more and more, I think, a bigger employment opportunity in manufacturing in general, and especially in food, because of the constraints you have as a food processor, and you have to meet certain requirements. And the companies, if they're not willing to share that information with you, you're going somewhere else. And so you get to kind of push on them. So it's a fun role. You work really closely with a lot of the other departments within the business. And then there's a lot of kind of optimization, and Brian probably has a better sense of this, actually, just to think about how much are we running in this quarter, how much inventory do we want to maintain, because inventory costs money. Like if I'm filling a pallet spot in my warehouse, there's a cost associated with that. So I don't want to carry it any longer than I need to. but also I don't want to short on it. So there's a bit of a balancing point. So like the business analytics side that Brian kind of is a little bit of expertise there. I got to think procurement's probably a big part of your life, Brian.
Oh yeah, for sure. The safety stocks and lead times and all of that
Yeah.
fun stuff.
When you guys are putting together, whether you're hiring or the youth that you're working with, yourself, Matt, if you were to look at, I'm going to start with yourself, Matt, and then I'm going to pivot to you, Brian. So, Matt, if you were to kind of think of some skills or abilities that would be great in this profession, what are one that you kind of gravitate to? Is there anything that you really think, these are some great skills that will really help you in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak from experience to say starting in like a technical position in like the QA world, it is a career path. If you're interested in starting there, you're going to start kind of on the floor, interacting with production staff, helping to make sure things are done correctly, safely. A lot of your time is going to be spent improving the business, which is fun too, because you get that circle to say like, I'm at the interface with operations, but also I'm helping create better business processes at the end of the day so the operations actually run smoother as a result of my role. So like having a bit of a technical background, I think both Brian and myself kind of were similar in that we just started somewhere and a lot of it was curiosity driven. And you find yourself helping a company and probably it's a bit of a fit to being interested in engaging with people, helping them improve. But then helping the business grow and then having that pay dividends and the business sees you and wants you to kind of move up within the business or continue on there. So like I think if you come from a technical background, you'll like it. And it doesn't have to be some specific degree. Like, I just have a science degree. I don't have anything in food science specifically, and I certainly don't have any quality assurance or engineering background, but you can certainly come from an engineering background and enjoy having that quality assurance rigidity to say like we have to do these things and document it correctly, but that continuous improvement attitude to say like we're going to try to do things better year over year to improve the business, lower our costs, and help the operations run as smoothly as possible. Like, that's my bias. Like that's where my background is. So I'll always naturally say, if this is your background, talk to me. I'll tell you more about how I did it and where I am today.
Fair. What about yourself, Brian? Was there like one skill that you're proud of in your career path and how you developed it, or is there anything that you found most useful of one of your skills in the past and that you've been able to continue to develop?
So I know I'm a little bit biased, but in terms of a hard skill, I'd probably say Excel. I know, like,
Fair.
kind of boring, but if you're typing formulas, building models, it's building critical thinking, it's building logic and reasoning, formatting spreadsheets to beautifying data. That means you're trying to communicate to someone, right? So I truly believe that being better at Excel than 80 to 90% of your peers will make you stand out regardless of what career you're in. In terms of soft skills, I think I'd say just being curious about the business. So if any business curiosity, develop that for sure. The ability to ask thoughtful questions, to connect the dots between different departments, understand why and how concepts apply to business processes. For someone starting out, definitely try to apply your skills to real situations. So there's a certain amount of learning that you can take out of formal training, right, for school, but it can only get you so far if you don't apply it. If you build skills from experience, if you find opportunities to learn and apply your skills in your own work or personal life, you'll be that much further ahead.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's something, my grandfather used to always say, if you do a job that you love, you never work a day in your life. And I know many people and many cultures have different versions of that. But, for myself, I love working with people, and that's never changed. I love hearing people's personal stories. And at AFPA, it's great because you get to hear so many businesses' personal stories and help them on their journey. We have a lot of small, medium-sized businesses in Alberta. I want to be respectful that there's a few people that are putting questions in the chat. So I want to ask just a few of those questions, and we'll come back to a few more that I have for you guys. Sigrid asked in the chat, they want to know what are the roles and jobs that are most in demand in your opinion right now in the food processing industry. Is there any for either of you that you're seeing, more of those, or you're needing more of a certain person now, or you're seeing it come into it? I'm just gonna give you guys a second to think. And I know recently with all the tariffs and trade conversations, there's been a lot of companies that have been reaching out to AFPA asking for more information and more support into international trade, looking at how to explore other markets. How do they don't have the internal staff capacity, just what is out there, how to look at when they approach another market. I know, Matt, from your experience and your background, there's a huge difference between approaching a company in the UK opposed to Asia. So companies just learning on what they should prepare for and how they approach these other countries is something that I'm seeing a lot of, something that probably is being triggered by other pressures from tariffs and trade for sure. Is there another career for either of you, or that you would want to touch on that you see that's now being more in demand in the food processing or beverage processing industry?
Matt
Brian,
kind of
did you
talked
have
about
one?
procurement earlier.
Yeah.
Procurement is a really good one. Even so, on the other side, Bianca, what you were talking about, expanding internationally. What about bringing products in from international suppliers? Importing those stuff is the job of a procurement manager, right? Such a useful skill to have is to understand international trade, but also having that analytical side, right? And then other jobs that I feel like are always in demand in the food industry. There's the production, there's the QA and food safety, but also maintenance is a big one. Whether it's facility maintenance, maintenance technicians, millwrights, they tend to be quite in high demand as well.
I can add to that, and I think, Brian, that was one that I had thought of earlier, but it kind of escaped me in the moment. But yeah, millwrights are actually a fantastic career in food, and it is pretty much a niche. It's something like we teach at NAIT, and kind of the economics of Alberta make it such that the vast majority of millwrights are probably going to go work in the oil patch. But a lot come back because they just want the stability of working for a food company, and less of that kind of like cyclical boom bust stuff. To say like I can have a regular 9 to 5 position, I'm not working shifts, or if you are working shifts, it's just a different sort of dynamic in food. But yes, just as complicated equipment. You've got boilers, you've got everything, right? So there's a lot of heavy equipment in food, and millwrights are in demand. Like Southern Alberta, there's a huge shortage of millwrights. So absolutely an opportunity there. I guess the perspective here is that, maintenance in food is actually quite different than maintenance at a traditional, say, oil and gas site. Because of the layer of food safety that's applied to it, preventative maintenance becomes a really big part of the program, and a lot of it is geared towards making sure there's no downtime. But also, if I'm walking into a food plant, I have a catalog and I've tagged every single piece of equipment, piece of tool that I'm walking into there with, because if I don't walk out with it, it's somewhere in that food plant, and it's gonna get into food somehow. So there's a huge risk. So there's actually quite a layer of nuance to heavy equipment, millwrights for food. And so to get to that level of experience makes you extremely employable. There's like that, you need to get the degree, of course, to become a millwright. But you also need to get some experience in food. And then once you have it, you're one of the most employable people probably, because you can probably find a job wherever you want. You're extremely in demand. Thanks for, Brian, that was great. Thanks for mentioning that.
I think there's also, I constantly hear from our members, is they still need the frontline worker, and I almost always, every company is I find often at one point in the year they're looking for someone else to add to their sales team. So if you're looking at maybe, if those are professions that you're already looking at, a frontline, being on the line can be everything. Here in Alberta, we have a very large baking industry. So, I think sometimes in food, there's this concept that it's going to be yucky or it's not going to be the best work environment. You know, we have a company here in Edmonton that makes the Dairy Queen cakes. I can't think of anything more fun than going to work every day than being able to work on the Dairy Queen cakes or being able to make and taste ice cream every day, Brian. You know, like I think there's different career paths out there. And I think also places have changed. Yes, there's meat processing facilities, but they're not the same as what we maybe had visions of many years ago. They've definitely evolved. They're very clean spaces. There's lots of different professions that you can have in them. So I think that actual worker that's making the food or making the alcohol is a very different environment. You know, if you're a distiller, it's a kind of a cool space to be in every day and to be able creating in that space all the way down to working in the front lines as a baker. So I know those are popular. Another question that popped up is blockchain. So one person just asking, is blockchain implementation feasible in the food processing industry? Do either of you have any experience in that or any thoughts that you want to pop forward?
I can start maybe, and I can say, like, I remember the early days of blockchain being a solution, especially for the traceability challenge of food. It seems like it's a fit. At the end of the day, databases end up kind of doing the job. And still, like, there isn't a lot of connectivity between suppliers. So meaning, like, in the supply chain, I should say, like, you know, getting an ingredient, making sure they're approved in my approved suppliers list, and then receiving a batch, lot code, name, goes into my database. I know when it's pulled and put into my product, and then I know what packaging it goes into. So it seems like logically blockchain would be one of those solutions. But at the end of the day, I think from what I saw, and so yeah, Brian, I'm totally curious on your side here, is we end up sort of solving the problem with databases, and it never really had that connectivity from supplier all the way to finished packaged goods, so that, you know, a retailer might say, boom, I know exactly what's in here all the way back. And there's actually a bit of a barrier where, as a food manufacturer, I don't necessarily want you to know who my suppliers are. That's a competitive advantage I have, to have a discrete suppliers list where I get my specific ingredients that are approved for me. I don't want my competitors to know that. I want to keep that to myself because I worked hard to get there. But yeah, Brian, I'm totally curious if, you know, on your view, this would have happened for you, I'm sure, in a similar capacity for me.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's the same. So I've heard about blockchain being used in the food industry in terms of traceability, but I don't know if it ever took off. And you're right, the databases and, you know, the simple tracking methods that we do now tend to be enough, especially
Yeah.
just to meet the requirements, you know, regulatory requirements. That's enough. You don't need to go, you know, 3 or 4 steps back. It's just one step back and one step forward.
Yeah.
Great point. Um, Another question we have is from Isabel, and they asked, will food processors train people so they can advance in their careers? I know you've had a personal story there, Brian, but do you want to share a little bit about your story and maybe what Foothills maybe would offer someone? And then maybe if you have any other stories that you've heard of, Matt, we can pop that in.
Yeah. Most of the entry level frontline workers get on the job training. Some employees that we take in, some of them might not even have experience in the food industry. As long as, you know, they're clean, you know, if you cook food at home, you understand the basic concept, and then you kind of just do that more cleaner. Um, you know, we've had people from different industries join us. So 2 weeks ago, someone from the software industry joined us. They haven't worked in manufacturing, let alone food, but they're kind of, you know, just they're learning a lot about the food industry and how it's different from what they were doing in the past. Same with energy. Some people from the energy um, industry have joined Foothills in the past, and they've gotten training as well. So um, personally, I got some training from Foothills, but and Foothills also supported me with training for advancing my career beyond what I currently do, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, similar, where I was trained with employers. sending me on courses. And so like my career definitely benefited from working at a company and then having that company support me in a lot of different ways and allowed me to expand my career from just being, you know, a lab person into quality management, regulatory affairs. You just start to get more exposure and you need a little bit of help to get there. And so there's the mentorship from within, I would say I saw. A lot of leaders would love to like help support you, put you on new projects to give you a bit of exposure, but also a willingness to get you training. And I mentioned that earlier on, like I've taken a lot of training, even just through AFPA, to help progress in food. And so I've seen that as well, where employees come in from different sectors, just like Brian had mentioned. And when you spend time in quality assurance, you're probably the person training them on food safety and getting them ready to work on the production floor. And so, yeah, there's always flexibility on who we're hiring. And then depending on how you're performing and your interests, there's always room to expand and get into new positions.
The next question is about what courses are in demand in food production, and maybe I'll turn to you, Matt, with just your experience at NAIT. But also, I will say, just for anyone that's joining us, we do have AFPA on demand. So it's AFPA on demand, and it's an opportunity for people to go online and test out some online courses in this space. I know, Brian, you talked about cleanliness, and there's a sanitation course on there that's available for free. So I think if also you're looking at this, it's not bad to even dibble dabble on some like online courses and see if this is a vocation that sparks some interest. You can also go to afpa.com and there's other courses there that you can sign up with that are higher level. But if you wanted a very entry level course, there's some entry level courses on AFPA on demand for free. It's also on the CareersNOW website, connections there that can bring you to opportunities and classes that are out there to kind of look at it. But when we talk about courses, so like what courses would you say, Matt, that you are seeing are more in demand now in food production, or anything that you're kind of you're noticing from the NAIT lens?
Yeah, I know one thing that comes to mind is on the programs at NAIT. One program that's always oversubscribed is like the baking. Baking is something that people like, I think it's a passion. And so they're like, I'm going to go to NAIT, get into culinary arts, and I'm going to do like a baking specialty. And so that is a very popular program. And I think bakers are a different breed, where yes, there's that creativity, but it's also that rigor of like doing it really, really specifically and getting to that end goal. So like, I know the baking program is one of those, and talking to the instructors, the vast majority of folks that get into baking are just like, I want to start my own bakery, have that grand vision of like, I'm going to start baking, I'm going to open up my own shop and grow. And so many folks come into it from that lens. But boy, what an opportunity. Bianca, you mentioned it. We have so many bakeries around Edmonton, just to take a
Even
baking
Alberta,
program and
like
then
it's our
walk
when we
down the
did
road and get
our
a
study
job.
a few years ago, number one food industry in Alberta, which blew me away because I always thought it was going to be protein. I thought it was
Yeah,
going to be meat, and then to hear
yeah.
that there are more bakeries in our province than anything else blew my mind.
Yeah, and that's what kind of like this question just made me think like, yeah, I know like we do have that passion, but then there's also like when you're ready, there's big commercial bakeries ready to help you, have you come on in a baking role. And the other programs or courses that I've seen is just like depending on your interests and if you're in the quality assurance world, like you can get into higher and higher level. You can get into like certification schemes like the BRCs, the SQFs. Like you can get into formal training on implementing those schemes in a food manufacturing site. So depending on what the companies are interested in, if you have training in those schemes, that might help you either grow within that business or get a job in that business, helping them implement that quality assurance system at the end of the day. Oh, otherwise, I guess, yeah, I mean, like meat cutting is the other one. Like Bianca, you mentioned protein. Meat cutting, another great program. Butchering, all those career paths, absolutely high demand, and they are having a hard time finding meat cutters. So it's another great career path for sure.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Crassy, and it says, are there any events, conferences, networking groups, or industry meetings in Alberta where food safety and quality assurance professionals can meet, share their experiences, and discuss food safety, SQF, HACCP, CFIA requirements, audits, and quality systems? I'd like to encourage you as a plug for AFPA to check out AFPA's website. So we have AFPA.com, and you can go there to the events. This year, we have more than tripled, or quadrupled our events. If you're an AFPA member, there is a free online and in-person event every month that you can attend now. So we're really excited about some different events that we're doing this year. One, we're partnering with NAIT for one that's coming up, so you can check out the website for more information about that. That'll be happening later in the year. But outside of AFPA, do you guys know of any other kind of ones specifically in the food safety and quality assurance area that I'm missing? And if there are ones that people have, if you want to pop in the chat, I'd love to learn more. And definitely we can add that information out there, and we can always add it to our AFPA events as well.
I've always taken part in the AFPA events, and so that was my
Appreciate
default
Yeah.
to say that's my North Star in getting trained. And then any of the networking events, it's usually everything listed there. And I mean, even Brian and myself are both kind of people who've worked in that space. That's where I've gone, aside from taking like other courses in other locations, depending on what it was, if there was some specific thing I needed to do. Or oftentimes you hire expertise as well. Like if you're working towards like a BRC, you might hire somebody like a consultant who specializes in BRC and have them come in and help consult on your site and get you ready, but you will be the person who actions it within the business. But otherwise, I haven't traveled to any other conferences outside of the AFPA world for this theme.
Same. Definitely reach out to AFPA to see if there's any events. Just taking the courses from AFPA gotten me so far. And beyond that, we've had a consultant help me kind of do a gap assessment with basically between, our certification scheme and where we are now. How can we narrow that gap? That helped me a ton.
Yeah.
Amazing. The next question is, are there any non-technical roles that are in demand? Can you think of a few that you're seeing that are maybe getting more from the non-technical side that are in demand in food processing right now?
I think you said one on sales. Like, I think that's something that people maybe look at and think, do I want to work in sales? And as somebody who does business development, which is basically sales, I'd say do it, because you just get to meet people and talk about great products. So I think sales really is one of those hard to hire for roles.
Yeah.
And they tend to have regionality attached to them. So there might be travel, and maybe that might be one of the concerns folks have, but really it doesn't require a technical background. It just requires that willingness to talk about the products, where they're getting listed, and the food supply chain can be quite different because you might be approaching retailers or you might be approaching institutions. So like the avenues for sales in food is actually quite dynamic. It's not one static way to get into market. If you want to sell into restaurants versus retailers, institutions like NAIT, where we have a contract with a supplier, Chartwells, that does all of our food on campus, but they do that in retirement homes, they do it in schools, post-secondaries, you name it. So there's a lot of different kind of fun ways to sell your products and think creatively about how you can go to market.
Yeah, sales for sure, and then sales and marketing, customer service. Every year we hire brand ambassadors, which are summer students typically. That's kind of one of the ways that we get entry-level positions from these summer jobs, and then later on when they graduate, they do stay on and become reps, for sales, or a rep for customer service. So you're not stuck to what you sign up for in the beginning. There's always a room to grow.
I would just add in, I think also about graphic design and just the artistic side of products. I think we often speak about what a product tastes like. but we've seen with consumers how powerful what a product looks like is, and that also includes packaging, whether that's design or the marketing, all that side of it. So I've seen a massive change myself, and also what I'm even seeing on the shelf coming out of Canada, that we're really seeing some very innovative packaging, whether that be environmentally friendly or people are trying new things to package your product in or the way it looks. But I'm seeing Canadian products literally like jump off the shelf at me, and that's exciting to me. So I would say also, if you have that background of design or anything like that, we're using that more in this space than I've ever seen before. One
Yeah.
question is, what kind of roles can experienced chef look for? Um, is there, you know, I know you deal with the culinary students, Matt. Is there anything that you have there that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think a chef is actually, there's like even like research chef is also a possibility. We've had some research chefs work in the research kitchen here, and that's kind of like just amping up that I've worked in restaurants, I have my culinary degree, like I want to keep working though towards this research. And so that's actually like a specific designation. And that would set you apart. You could work for kind of like the big food companies with a designation like that, like the Mondelez, Hershey, like in chocolate, like you name it. Like that's something that they look for, because a lot of big food ingredient companies are always looking for where am I using these ingredients and how am I using these ingredients. So that creativity you come with as a chef really helps that, because food science as a discipline sometimes is less creative, a little bit more like strict on requirements for products and less on the creative side. So yeah, bringing that like that chef energy really helps, and I think that a lot of companies are looking for that as they're, depending on what the product types are. If I'm an ingredient company and I'm trying to get into new products, where should I be using this? Or if I am a product company, what other products should I be developing? Especially like I think right away, ready to eat foods, quick meal prep things. A chef had to create that at some point for the company to go and manufacture it. You need to help them do it right so that it tastes great at the end of the day. That's what I think right away.
Sure.
Is that research chef designation could be a really fun one and really set you apart.
The next one, Brian, I'm going to ask for you. So Victoria asked, any advice on getting a food product developer job? So they're saying, you know, like the market right now is incredibly slow. They're finding with R&D roles, especially in Edmonton. Is there any more advice that you would say? Would you say like look outside of Edmonton, or what are some advice that they should kind of be looking at right now if that's an area they want to pursue?
I feel like there's actually a lot of roles. It's kind of like a hybrid role, right? So I am in charge of business analytics and innovation. Typically, most people that wear that hat of innovation and product development is usually doing something else. So I would advise to kind of look at other skills that you can kind of pair with that skill set that you currently have, and maybe pair something a little bit more technical, but not on the food side, you know,
Yeah.
with that. They'll take you really far.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
I
would
know we
add
only
like,
got probably about 8 minutes left, so I'm going to keep going here really fast.
oh,
Sorry,
okay.
Matt, to cut you off.
No,
I
no
just want to
worries.
grab a few more of these questions if it works for you guys. Um, Alexander was asking if there's any maintenance roles, and I know we touched on that, you know, that the maintenance opportunities that exist in out there right now, and there's maintenance planner or schedule. So I would definitely say check into some local food establishments or beverage establishments in your areas. I know with the brewing and distilling industry, maintenance is also key. So if they have equipment, maintenance is definitely part of their portfolio. I'm gonna, Carlos was asking, how is the competition in this industry? And I know this is a question that I get asked a lot, but kind of more on the regulatory side. If we have a huge industry, why are the food products getting more expensive? And I think there's kind of this misconception that if there's competition, that things would be cheaper. But I can start off by saying, you know, I think there's a lot of competition in our industry. I know when I look at AFPA, how many members that we have and how many companies we were supporting between our different programs that we offer, whether it's Made in Alberta, which is a buy local program that supports companies that make local food or beverage production and helping consumers easily find them, or at scale, helping companies truly scale their product up, or other products or other projects that we're working on, we've seen our membership dramatically change. In the last 3.5 years, we've gone from supporting about 250 food and beverage companies to now over 1,000. So I think it just really shows how much and how many people are trying to remain connected and grow and expand. Is there anything else that you guys would want to add in about the competitiveness or food cost side of things?
Yeah, I guess it's a competitive, for sure, a competitive market. And the statistics are like Canada, we manufacture 70% of the food we eat. So it's actually a really good number, but we're planning to get to higher, get it to 80.
Sure.
Like that's where we want to be with federal guidance or overarching goals there. But also, I would say, like at the end of the day, like Bianca, most of the members are small businesses with only so much capacity, and so therefore only so much market share and ability to capture it. And then also, I mean, yeah, we here cannot collectively control inflation. But yeah, just the size and sheer scale of Canada and our population sparsity doesn't help trucking. I think at the end of the day, Brian might have a better sense of that, but you're trucking everything everywhere here. So yeah, it is a very competitive market, and we do the best. Absolutely, we absolutely can. It's very competitive, but at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff is out of our control.
I'm going to go to you next, Brian, for the next question, because we've only got about 4 minutes left. So what would you say is your advice for someone? They have a degree in food science, but they don't have any frontline plant experience. So is there an ideal entry position that you would tell them to look for or start applying for?
Um, yeah, QA technician, QA supervisors. These are typical entry points for someone that has a food science background. I myself I have a microbiology and chemistry background, so it's not even food science, but I was able to kind of apply those skills on the food context, right? So I started with a company, but as soon as I started, I did self-study with a lot of different food schemes, studying regulatory, and then got the role and succeeded in the role. Um, yeah, definitely open up your horizons. You can pick between the dairy, the meats, the snacks, and other foods, bakery. But at the end of the day, like one thing in common with all of them is the regulatory side. Um, very, very important, and um, food safety. So you're not just coming up with uh, new products, but at the same time, like what's the safety, what's the impact on shelf life, um, and you can take that on the floor. You're the expert on the floor, typically, because most operators might not understand that, right? So, definitely leverage that knowledge.
I think you kind of tapped on their second question there was about, any other courses that you think would be useful for someone as a food scientist. Is there anything? Well, I think you've kind of tapped on it a bit. I know we only just have a few minutes left, and I have a last question for both of you. So my question would be, when you look at your careers now, when you started off in this industry and where you've made it to today, is there one skill or one moment for you that really stands out and you feel like that's what's made you love this industry and have been a success in it?
The one, I guess, will be quick. Like the thing that I love is that people who work in food love what they do, and they tend to stay. Like that's resounding to me. No matter where you are in the supply chain, so many people have worked their careers and have not left for a reason. Like you get captured into food in some way, and you never leave. You end up staying with it. It's just that endearing of a sector, and you love who you work with, and it's obvious all the way to the retail level. Like people work their careers in different food places, and just you never get out of it. It's great. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Brian?
For me, it's working with a smaller company. Gave me a ton of experience with, interacting with, finance and accounting and sales and marketing and production. I can go down the hall and talk to our CEO and that gave me so much exposure um, in terms of just business knowledge and things like that. And typically, food companies are quite small, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
We have one last question, I guess, that just popped in at the end, and they were just saying if you're, Sigrid is asking what is the best way to reach hiring companies. And I think, there's been difficulties and blessings that have come with so many things coming online. I know AFPA, we've expanded our team in the last few years, and I never thought we'd get the amount of applicants we did. It's just with things going online, I think things can kind of get lost in the noise sometimes, and it's hard to sift through anything. If you have any advice for everyone that's looking to apply for jobs in this industry, what would you say they should do? I know there's postings that hit online, but is there anything else that you recommend that they do to reach out?
Networking if possible. Like AFPA events are great networking opportunities because AFPA members show up. Like that's the other cool thing about AFPA is that you've got like you're gonna see Brian there. Like odds are if he doesn't have something else going on or somebody from his team. So yeah, networking and meeting that face to face helps a ton. So that when stuff comes up, they know, oh, I think I met somebody who's interested in food science, has background in food science, and wants to do some QA work. And a lot of that's a great opportunity is the networking side.
Networking for sure.
Perfect. Well, another thing you can do too is we'll put the website on the page for Careers Now and how they're partnering with AFPA. We're so honored to have so many of you join us today, but you can definitely go out and check and see there of some other opportunities that'll come up. This is just the beginning. Careers Now has done some incredible work in Ontario, and we're excited to dip the toe in what we can possibly do here in Alberta. So I think there's going to be lots more to come, and that's something that I can take away is how we can better connect people that are looking for jobs in this space with the jobs that exist. So something for me to work on. Thanks, gentlemen. It was amazing to have you guys join us. And thank you all for joining us online today. It was really lovely to have you be part of the conversation. And if you want to learn more, like I said, check out the AFPA website and the Careers Now website. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Bianca.